Good afternoon, Queen's Voice. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Today we are in Bronxville, New York, Westchester County, and we have a very special guest today. We're here with Bobbie Anne Cox, who is an attorney. Bobbie, thank you for having us.
Yes,
We appreciate it
yes.
very much. We know you're a very busy lady.
Nice to be on. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it. We've been following you for a long time, as I know a lot of our viewers and citizens have been following you. The reason we want to sit down and speak first is you've recently been battling Governor Hochul, as I like to call her, the tyrant, or hopeless Hochul. Mm-hmm. And for those of us who live in New York and those of us following the stories know that unfortunately here in New York, our elected officials tend to be very power hungry, for a lack of words. What was it that, I know you initially started off as an attorney and you were suing school districts and towns and villages regarding property tax for business owners and homeowners who were unjustly taxed. But more recently, you've gotten into the spotlight into civil rights, I guess. What made you, what basically said, when you said to yourself one day, I have to get involved, what was the last straw where you said, hey, I have to take action?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say really when March of 2020 hit and the then governor of New York was Cuomo. You know, he and the New York State legislature really started to overreach. I mean, from day one almost, they started doing things that they had no power to do. You know, the lockdowns that they pushed on New Yorkers, they said, oh, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. You know, those lockdowns lasted for months.
Months, yeah.
And people were losing their businesses. They were losing their livelihoods. They were losing all of their life savings that they had saved and then built a small, whatever it was, you know, a store, an investment property where they maybe bought a 2-family house. They lived in one side, they rented out the other. You know, people were coming to me for help and they were hurting not because of a virus, they were hurting because of what the government was doing to them and the restrictions that the government was putting on them, complete breach of multiple provisions in our Constitution, and people were going belly up. I mean, people were filing for bankruptcy. They weren't able to hold on to their properties or their homes or
Businesses.
their businesses. So I said, this is wrong. I started speaking out almost immediately. And then in 2021, somebody brought to my attention this quarantine, isolation and quarantine regulation is what they called it. It was, people started referring to it as 2.13 because that's the section that it was in the 10 NYCRR, the New York code. And it was just so outrageous. It was a regulation made by the Department of Health and Kathy Hochul, who now is our governor. And excuse me, it basically gave the Department of Health this power to pick and choose which New Yorkers they could lock up or lock down. They didn't have to prove you were sick. They could have held you in a facility or kept you locked in your home for however long they wanted.
No due process.
No due process. You didn't even have the right to an attorney until after you were locked
60
up.
days in, right, I think?
No, there was no time. There was no time frame at all. It was, you can have, counsel after you're locked up or locked down. You had no right to a notice. They could have just shown up at your door, knocked on your door, handed you a declaration from the Department of Health. You know, it was,
off to the gulags you go.
Yeah, it was horrendous. It was horrendous. They didn't even have to prove you were sick. They didn't have to prove you were exposed to a communicable disease. And it wasn't just COVID related. They had a laundry list of, you know, diseases, which some were, that are on that list were very, you know, dangerous
Sure.
and communicable. But then there were some on there that weren't, like toxic shock syndrome is on the list. Lyme disease is on the list. You know, those are not communicable diseases. No. So it was just complete 100% government overreach. And so that's when I really said, that's it. I'm not going to just sit back and watch them do this. Other attorneys I had approached about it did not want to take the case. They didn't want to sue on that.
If we could touch on that, I saw some previous interviews you did, and you actually said that you tried to reach out to some attorneys, and for the most part, nobody wanted to be involved or work with you or you know, do anything. Why was that? Or were they afraid of the governor? Were they afraid to be targeted? Or
Yeah, I think it was probably a combination of things. I have been handling that quarantine case pro bono for the past 2.5 years.
Wow.
So, attorneys didn't want to work for free.
So just so our viewers know, you're definitely something that you're doing pro bono. You're not getting rich off this. It's a lot of work.
No, getting rich off this, I'm losing money.
Losing money.
Yeah, I mean, it's, when an attorney does work pro bono, it's free for the people.
Yes,
Or
but not for your office.
or for the client. But it is basically that the attorney then is funding everything.
So just so our viewers understand, you still have rent and you're having staff and you have overhead and there's filing cost and, obviously when pro bono, it's not that the government's not cutting a check. You're doing it out of your own pocket. And in the end, you see what happens, but you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart because something you believe in and you're trying to protect the citizens from Miss Hochul's overreach.
Yeah, absolutely. And the money there's no money involved in the law, so we're not suing for any sort of monetary
So it's not a class action or
compensation.
anything.
It's simply to strike down that quarantine regulation and make it so that they can never bring it again. And so, yeah, I basically put a donate button up on my website and I said, whoever can help support this lawsuit, go on my website, click the donate button and make a donation.
While we're
So-
talking about it, please let our viewers around the world know where they can go to help you, website, how they can help, the fund, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. If they go to coxlawyers.com is my website. So it's COX lawyers.com. The donate button is right there. And yeah, any amount is helpful. There doesn't have to be, a huge donation amount because whatever people can give is terrific. It is a long process. It's a costly process. And the main takeaway about this quarantine lawsuit is that people have to pay attention to what the government is doing.
Yes.
People didn't know about that quarantine regulation. Many people today still don't know about that quarantine regulation. Mainstream media doesn't want to cover it.
Well, I'll tell you something, if I may. We recently interviewed a state senator, and when we brought that up, they had no idea. And now she either played stupid or was ignorant to it. We don't know what would be worse or a combination, but they actually stopped the interview, and her handler started Googling it on her phone. And I said, how do you not know about it? I said, you're based in Albany. And they were dumbfounded, and they shortly after they ended our interview. And we'll be releasing that interview soon. But just to show you, we honestly, in our heart of hearts, don't know if this senator was playing dumb or was just ignorant to, we don't know what would be worse. Either way, detrimental to your constituents. But I think what Bobbie Anne is saying is if you can help, everything helps. Donate to the cause if you do care about government overreach, freedom, rights of people, and stopping tyrants like Governor Hochul. Donate to the lady if you can. She's a freedom fighter with a pen, not a rifle in this situation. But if folks like Bobbie Anne aren't going to challenge the overreach of Big Brother, so to speak, who will? So if it wasn't for people like you, and we recently did an interview with another lawyer, Jim Maramigis, who's fighting a little bit different stuff with the anti-lockdown and the vaccine stuff, but nonetheless, it's just, to me, a little astonishing there haven't been a lot more attorneys doing this, and it's just a handful. And to me, I think you should be, have a lot of accolades for that and be, commended, you and the other attorneys. I know just a few. Mm-hmm. So if there's any other attorneys out there watching, step up your game. Help the citizens like Bobbie and a few others are, because, we need people like you, Bobbie.
Yeah, absolutely. In my most recent case, I also did pro bono. That one has come to a full conclusion, and that was on Prop 1, which I know we're going to discuss as well. But
sure.
Yeah, the fact that people are not aware enough about what is going on in Albany is a huge problem. A lot of times people focus either on federal,
yes,
right, and they say, "Oh, presidential election." Yeah, that is very important. I'm not saying it's not, but people oftentimes don't pay attention to what's going on at the state level, which will affect your everyday life. And lots of people I've spoken to, because I do travel the state of New York. I crisscross the state constantly, giving speeches and doing events and stuff.
No, we know you're a very busy lady, very busy.
People I talk to, no matter where they are in the state. Some people don't even know who their state senator is.
Yes.
Some people don't know who their state assembly member is. And that's not good, because that means they're not engaged in their civic responsibilities. We do have a responsibility as a citizen of this state and as a citizen of this country to keep our government in check. But if you don't even know who's representing you, then how can you keep your government in check?
Or if you don't vote. For those of you out there, if you don't vote and you just complain to your friends and neighbors and colleagues and you don't go to the ballot box, shame on you. So everybody has to vote. And you did hit something right on the head. We're in a very contentious presidential election cycle. So obviously it's, in the newspapers, on the news, on the radio, most people are focused on the election. But we have to focus on what's happening in Albany and even what's happening in our own city hall here in New York City. There's a lot of, folks who believe that they should wield power like the governor. And we saw what the prior governor Cuomo did as well, where they're very power hungry and they think they could just sign executive orders. And, at the end of the day, they're almost like God. So everybody out there must look into, 213 as we refer to it. And, we talk about where Hochul can basically have the health department or, her enforcers come, you're sick, you're calling for many reasons, put you in the gulags. And those are almost, FEMA concentration camps with the barbed wires to keep you from getting out. And it's crazy to think of 2024 and we have people in New York State. The leader of New York, the most powerful person, most powerful woman, has very evil intentions, in my opinion. Who would want to do that? Like, what leader? Why would you do that? And another thing I'd like to touch on is if all of these diseases and the COVID and whatnot, all these, viruses are so, critically important, we're letting millions of people come through the border without masks, without ID, let alone medical papers. They're not being forced to vaccinate. They're not being forced to check their temperature or anything. So why is it do this for the citizens, but the illegal aliens get a pass on that if it's such a dangerous health concern?
Yep. You really touched on a very hot topic. People say that to me all the time.
Yes.
Why are the citizens being forced to do X, Y, Z by the government, and then they're bringing in all of these people that are not vetted, like you're saying, and they don't have to abide by the same rules? It is hypocrisy at its height, and it is wrong, and you cannot have selective enforcement of law. That's unconstitutional. Everybody, when you have a law, it has to apply to everyone equally. You can't just say, well, it doesn't apply to this group of
Just
people
certain
that's
people.
illegal, but it applies to these citizens. No, that's not the way that it works. And the other thing about the quarantine camp regulation is, people try to say, well, we need to give, like you just referenced, we need to give the government the power to keep the people safe. And, if somebody has a disease that's dangerous, or if somebody's been exposed to a disease, the government has to step in and quarantine those people. We already have a quarantine law. We've had a quarantine law in New York State for 70 years.
On the books.
That was passed by our New York State legislature. That's who makes laws. This is a quarantine regulation. This is the governor and her Department of Health coming in and saying, we don't really like that law that was passed in 1953. We're going to make a regulation that completely conflicts with the law, and we're just going to stick with this. Totally unconstitutional. The governor, an agency that sits under the governor, does not have the power to make law or change law, right? We have 3 branches of government, separation of powers.
Checks and balances.
Checks and balances. Everybody knows. We think back to your social studies class, right, in grade school. We got the legislative branch, which is our legislative body makes law. That's our state senators and our state assembly members. Then we have our judicial, which is the courts and the judges.
Sure.
Then we have the governor over here in the executive. The governor and her agencies, they enforce laws. They don't change laws. They don't make laws. But that's what they did here. They made a regulation that changed a law, or tried to change a law.
They enforce laws, not create laws and not pass laws. But the overreach is that I believe she's super hungry for power. Why do that? I ask myself the question. We talk amongst the staff at Queen's Voice. We talk to a lot of people, on, off camera, and nobody really has a good, and it's not a trick question, but in your heart of hearts, why do you think Governor Hochul, anybody else, why would they need to try to get that kind of power, get rid of certain people? What would be the end game with it? It's a very sick, law or power to want to have. What would be the goal for this woman to do this to citizens?
Yeah, I don't know what their thought process is, but I definitely know that if that regulation is reinstated, which because Governor Hochul and Letitia James, who's the Attorney General,
General.
appealed, and the court flipped our decision and said, oh, no standing, you're out. That opens the door now for Hochul and her Department of Health to reissue that regulation. Now, they have to go through the proper procedures, but who cares? They can still reissue the regulation.
You did win a case against her, and then it was overturned, like you said, right, by a different court or a higher court. What is the status now so our viewers know? Is it something that you're going to appeal this? Or are you waiting to see her next move? Or what's the next process for your law office to stop this, hopefully, God willing?
Right. So as of today, we did win at the trial court level. So the regulation is dead, does not exist.
Okay.
Because of the appeal, it now opens the door, like I said, that they could reissue that reg if they want. And so we have appealed to the state's highest court, which is the Court of Appeals, which sits in Albany. And we've asked them to take the case. And, we want to obviously argue to them that what the middle court did was wrong and what the trial court did was right. And so
Get them to go back.
we want them to basically uphold what the trial court said.
Okay.
So we're waiting to hear back from the Court of Appeals, see if they're going to hear the case or not.
No, God forbid they say, hey, we're not going to hear it. What's your next step, Bobbie?
There's nothing left to do on a legal basis. It would have to be if the governor and the Department of Health try to reissue that regulation, that the people are going to have to get involved. And hopefully a powerful enough voice from the people will stop them from going through that process again. But as of right now, we're still waiting to hear what the highest court is going to say about taking the case or not.
So if this highest court of the land here in New York State, in Albany, does not take it or doesn't go, this isn't something that we can take to Washington, to the Supreme Court.
No.
Okay.
No, not that kind of case.
Not that kind of case.
Yep.
So when you say that the people have to mobilize and get together, should we assume that means everybody contacting the governor and their local officials, some kind of street protest or march, or is it basically pushing, because I know in New York State, they've made it very hard to get things on a ballot statewide and citywide in different places, or do you think it's something where we have to push to try to get this on the ballot where enough people say nope and we tie our hands when Ms. Hochul can't do this again?
Yeah, it'll never show up on the ballot in New York State because the politicians that run Albany, it's supermajority Democrat rule. They are radical politicians. They have no care for the Constitution. They do things constantly that violate the Constitution. They have proposed bills, proposed laws that are, and they've passed laws that are 100% unconstitutional. So they do not care. It's almost pointless to try and ask them to do the right thing or to put something on a ballot for the people of New York to vote on. So yeah, people are going to have to pick up the phone, call their senators, call their assembly members.
Scream and yell.
They're going to have to call the governor's office. Yeah, they're going to have to get involved. This is what our government is supposed to be, right? The Constitution was written to keep the government in check. It was written to keep the politicians in check. It wasn't written to keep you and me and we the people in check. We the people are supposed to be keeping an eye on what the government's doing. And when they breach something in the Constitution, which was written to tell them this is what you're allowed to do, nothing else, when they start taking powers that they're not supposed to have, it's incumbent on it's incumbent on the people to step up and say, no, you can't do that. And you pick up the phone and you call the governor, or you write an email, or you send a letter, or you know.
We do a protest or something.
What you have to be a part of the process. You can't just sit back and, like you said, complain to your friends or post something on social media that, no, you have to vote. You have to be involved. You have to know what's going on. It's so important.
So as smart as the lady is and as effective and as good of a fighter as she is, so in particular to our friends here in New York State, our fellow residents, you can't leave it all to Bobbie Anne or other attorneys to do this. You're going to have to vote and be vocal, go to your elected official's office, call them, email them, be a pain in the neck and let your voice be heard. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors, coworkers, hey, this is terrible. It's detrimental to New York State, to our rights. Do something. Because you can't just, we can't just sit around and complain and not do something. We can't all, as great as you are, we can't all depend on Bobbie Anne to save the day. Other people have to come on board and fight the fight with you. And I think that touches on what we spoke about earlier. A lot of people just don't know. They just don't know what's going on, and they're following maybe just a presidential election, or there's a lot of conflict in the world, and that eats up a lot of the news, and whether it's print or radio or internet or TV. So unfortunately, we have to all wake up, see what's going on. With this is one thing, and if you're watching Governor Hochul, shame on you. I mean, this is a horrible, horrible, horrible way to treat your constituents. I want to talk to you about something else, the Chevron Doctrine. So we here at Queen's Voice recently wrote a book about the Chevron Doctrine, 1984. Do you think that with everything that's come since the Chevron Doctrine, is this going to affect anything that's happening with Governor Hochul, any other stuff in New York, where basically it's saying that a lot of the, for a lack of terminology, the three-letter government agencies that are unelected bureaucrats cannot interpret the law or, make the law? They're not elected officials. Do you see anything being beneficial with that, helping us in New York with any of these things we spoke about, or maybe something else?
The Chevron Doctrine has been overturned by the Supreme Court, so it will hopefully trickle down into state-related issues. That is, a federal case, but it hopefully will start to influence in New York. But yeah, agencies can't make law. Chevron was saying you have to defer to agencies, and agencies then went spinning out of control for decades, doing things they couldn't do, like we saw with the Department of Health here in New York State with the quarantine regulation. So yeah, hopefully the overturning of Chevron will have a nice effect on putting agencies back into their place. They won't do it voluntarily because New York is one-party rule.
Sure.
Doesn't matter which party it is. It's toxic to have only one party in charge.
I agree.
So that's not going to happen voluntarily. It's going to have to be through lawsuits, but it's not really a sustainable model. I mean, I just got through with the Prop 1 lawsuit, which a colleague of mine and I brought a year ago, against what the Democrats or the left is calling, the Equal Rights Amendment.
Oh, please tell us about that, please, because I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah. So that's my most recent litigation that just concluded about 2 months ago. The party in charge wants to change our New York State Constitution. They want to add a laundry list of protected classes to our Constitution. So what our Constitution currently says in New York is that you can't discriminate against somebody based on race, religion, creed, or color. They want to add language that will say you can't discriminate against people based on ethnicity, national origin.
Place of origin, yeah.
The age, disability, sex, including sexual identity, gender, gender identity. All of these things, pregnancy outcomes, pregnancy, healthcare, autonomy. I mean, they have all this broad language.
Broad, very broad.
Very broad, ill-defined, right? Which they want to throw into the Constitution now. And though they call it the Equal Rights Amendment, it's really the abolition of your rights amendment. The effect it will have is devastating. It is a Trojan horse of epic proportions. It will lead to the weakening of parental rights in this state. It will lead to people who are not citizens, whether they're legally here or illegally here, claiming the same rights
Being
as
allowed
New
to
Yorkers.
vote,
Yep.
which is crazy.
This is without doubt going to happen. It's going to lead to the abolition of women's safe spaces. It's going to lead to the abolition of girls' sports.
So men are in women's locker rooms, and unfortunately, and we're seeing, men who say identify as a female going into weightlifting and other sports, and they're breaking records. And as someone who's a parent of a little girl, I don't want my girl to be on a team with boys or someone who, has a penis and says I'm a woman to me, or in a locker room, God forbid. And we're seeing sexual assaults occur through locker rooms throughout the country, at sports clubs and other stuff like that. So it's almost like it's going to destroy society. Am I wrong to say that?
No, it's not a stretch, because you're going to have all these classes, right? They're protected classes under the Constitution, but now they're all going to be fighting with each other. Mm-hmm. Now there's going to be a huge conflict, because the question's going to be, well, who's more protected?
Who's more important to be? Yeah.
Right? Whose rights are more protected?
Because is it a woman's right to not have a male in her locker room, her bathroom, her showers,
her team?
her, or
Yes.
or is it the male who wants to be a female? Now does his right trump a woman's right?
I don't believe so.
Right? What happened to women's lib that we fought so hard for? What is going to happen if you can't discriminate based on somebody's gender identity to girls who have trained hours,
Some of them
weeks,
their whole
months,
lives
years
to be Olympians or
of-
something.
Yes, of their lives to go. We just saw it in the Olympics that was held in Paris a couple months ago. You saw biological males competing in the female divisions and beating them
Disgusting.
and taking their titles, taking their, whatever kind of
Their future, their livelihoods. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what does that say to girls who are young girls and want to aspire to become an Olympic champion or a world champion or just want to get a college scholarship, right, for the talent that they have in whatever sport that is? Now that's all going to be pushed to the wayside, and girls are going to be beaten out by biological males competing in their divisions.
It's already happening.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is. It's already happening. I spoke extensively with Riley Gaines, who is a woman who was a swimmer, a collegiate swimmer at a high level,
Very high level.
and was beat out by a biological male. And, you have to wonder, and in that case, she had said that Leah Thompson was the name that he went by, I think she said like ranked 1,400th or something
Sure.
in the men's division. But then coming into the women's swimming division, jumped up to the podium. So, obviously, males are biologically built different and they're
Sure.
biologically stronger than the females. Someone just told me about a story. This did not happen in New York State, but it was equally as potent.
Well, not yet, unfortunately.
Well, no, I'm sure it is happening. I
Sure.
just haven't heard about it yet. An all-girls volleyball team, and the other team had biological male on the team. He spiked the ball, and it hit the girl in the face 70 miles an hour and caused permanent partial paralysis for this girl.
It's terrible.
So, we're also talking about not just a fairness issue, but a safety issue.
Safety, yeah.
Right? So this is horrendous. This thing is, Prop 1 is a, radical
Trojan horse, like you
left
said.
Trojan horse. It'll put their wish list, their laundry list of things that they want to do to change our norms into our Constitution.
That's insane.
And once it's in the Constitution, you're really not getting it out. It's very difficult to remove something from the Constitution once it's in there in New York State. So
Almost impossible.
Yeah, this is what I've been working on to try to help raise awareness, because people don't even know about Prop 1.
No, they believe, and I just spoke to a few people privately this week, and they said, no, it's great, it's all inclusive, it's about equity. And I said, it's about, and I said, I have a daughter who's going to be 6 this week. And I said, you have children. I spoke to people, and I said, do you realize not just a teacher or an administrator, but a janitor, a cook, anybody can say yes to some kind of procedure or some kind of sexual change procedure, not notify the parents, and they think that's okay. And I'm trying to tell our viewers out there, if you're in New York, and this is coming up November 5th, there's obviously the presidential election, a lot of other important things, but this is being labeled as something that's really good and great for everybody, and this inclusion and equity. If you have children, if you're parents, grandparents, if you're a guardian, if you care about children, you have to vote no, because like Bobbie Anne said, once this gets put, God forbid, into the state's constitution, it will almost be impossible to take it out.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It's really a not just a Trojan horse. We now have the Catholic Church has come out against this.
Oh, yeah.
Calling it a sheep in wolves' clothing. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing, because it's so it's being sold as so kind.
It's being marketed, yeah.
And even when you read the language, what's actually on the ballot is not the wording that would go into the Constitution. It's kind of like just a summary.
It's sugar-coated.
And it sounds great. Do you want equal treatment? That's what you're going to say on your ballot. Do you want equal treatment for the following categories? And then it's, age, ethnicity, national origin, sex, gender identity, all these things listed out. And of course, people are going to say, well, yeah, of course, nobody wants to have
Sounds great.
someone
Yeah.
discriminated against. But people have to understand that's not what
No.
it's about and what it will lead to. And vote no. I mean, this is a very important proposal that's on the ballot. If it's not at the bottom of your ballot, people have to flip over the ballot. It'll be on the back of the ballot. It'll be known as proposal number 1. Everybody needs to vote no, and tell all your friends and family to vote no. The politicians pushing this are saying it's to protect abortion rights in New York State. That's what they say. You have to vote yes because otherwise, your abortion rights won't be protected. That is a lie. New York has the most liberal abortion laws around, and we've had abortion codified in our laws for over 50 years in New York State. Abortion's going nowhere. Nobody's threatening to take abortion away. This is just a scare tactic that those politicians are using
To get women to vote yes.
to try and get their base out to vote because they can't run on anything else. They can't run on safety because
Nope.
we're not safe anymore when we walk the streets.
No, we're not.
They can't run on the economy because
Nope.
they've completely destroyed the economy. People can barely afford their air conditioning bills this summer, let alone heading into the winter with the heating bills.
Sad, but very true.
They can't run on quality of life because
No.
your dollar gets you nowhere anymore
No.
with the outrageous inflation that's going on. They can't run on autonomy and national pride because they've brought in millions of people that shouldn't be in our country, and you're stepping over them meaning the citizens and the people, to help people that aren't even supposed to be here. We love immigrants in this country,
Legal ones.
but you have to follow the laws. If we don't follow our laws, we become a banana republic. And you can't just pick and choose which laws you want to follow. You follow all the laws. So it's really important that people understand this. Vote no on Prop 1. It's not what the other side, who are pushing this, it's not what they're claiming that it is.
So, viewers out there, so you're hearing it right from Bobbie Anne's mouth. I'm not an attorney. She's a lot smarter than myself and probably my whole staff in Queen's Voice. She's very knowledgeable of the law. We're not as knowledgeable as her. If this lady is telling you it's a bad pill, it's a Trojan horse, and we've pretty much broken down a lot of the nefarious things that are contained in there. Do us all a favor for our children, for our future. Vote no. We don't want illegal aliens to vote. We're already putting them ahead of our own people, our own sick, our own poor, our own veterans, etc. We've already, I'm not saying all of them, but unfortunately many of them have come here to rape, kill, murder, steal, loot, and unfortunately they're here in New York City. They're let, Mets tickets, condoms, and a Metro card, 2 hours, they're on the train again. So this is a very serious election for a lot of reasons, the presidential election and other offices, but New York State, look into Prop 1. It's not what it says. It's not, roses and gumdrops. It's a very evil, nasty pill, and I hope everyone who's watching this will tell 1 or 2 people who can tell 1 or 2 other people. Let them watch this video with Bobbie explaining it. This is a terrible, terrible thing, and we have to vote no. God willing, we'll vote no. But as you said, unfortunately, a lot of our fellow citizens in this state are oblivious to this. They have no idea, or they believe it's going to be, what's wrong with equity and inclusion and rights for everybody? Sounds great, but that's not what the heart of this is, unfortunately.
No, absolutely not. So, but I thank you for covering this and helping to spread the word because, like I said, there's very little media that's willing to tell both sides of the Prop 1 equation.
Yeah.
I see lots of, the League of Women Voters is pushing yes on Prop 1. You've got these.
That's crazy.
You've got universities pushing it to their students. You've got the Bar Association pushing it. And they are having these forums, and they call them information sessions or they call them forums, but they only have one side there. Those people, those forums, they're not asking me to come talk.
Oh, I'm sure they're not.
They're not asking my co-counsel on our case to come talk.
No.
So they are purposely only having one side
One
of the
view,
equation.
yes. Now,
So
one thing that I'm baffled by, how you're not on every talk show, every major cable, major news show. You should be on there. We should see your face on every show, every hour. But they're not showing people like you, your side, and the people's side, because anyone who knows about this knows this is a sham and an evil one. But they're only showing one side. They don't want Bobbie Anne to, because you're going to tell the truth, and you're a smart lady who knows the law, and you're going to disseminate the garbage and tell people, hey, it's not rainbows and gumdrops, this is evil. And I think that's a big reason that we're not seeing a lot more of you. And that's a big reason that we've been following you for a long time. And that's a big reason that we wanted to come hear it from your mouth, because a lot of people out there, whether they're women or other citizens or even men, it doesn't matter. They're making this look like it's beautiful, and it's going to be this great bill that's going to be a good thing for you. It's horrible.
It's terrible. It's very dangerous to our rights and to our norms as a society. I would suggest if people want more information to check it out on my website.
Please tell them, Bobbie. What's the best place they can find your personal information that they can see from you?
Yeah, I would say either going to my website, which is coxlawyers.com, or going to my Substack. I have a Substack that I write an article once a week. And if you sign up, you will automatically get that sent to your email once a week. And I write about topics, not just New York topics, mostly New York, but not just New York. I do write about national issues, everything always having to do with a legal perspective. So if people go to either substack.com and just type in my name, Bobbie Anne Cox, or you can go direct to attorneycox.substack.com, and that's my page. People can also follow me on Twitter. I'm very censored, but I've been tweeting about Prop 1 lately, and
you've been at the forefront.
Yeah, my tweets need to start going viral for people.
Yes.
People need to help, and it's so simple. Find me on Twitter. It's attorney_Cox, COX. Follow me, and when I tweet something, just retweet it. It's so simple. It takes 1 second.
Share it with a friend.
Share it, take the link, send it to your text chat or your email chat, whatever. We have to spread the word about this. Mainstream media is not covering it. And although I've done about a week or two ago, I did a press conference with Congressman Lee Zeldin about this.
Okay.
We need people to start to help spread the word, and it is powerful on social media. So I hope people will do that. I'm also on Instagram.
Please share all your handles where we can find you, our viewers. And I urge all our viewers, look the lady up, subscribe to her newsletter, follow her. She's obviously at the forefront of this, very knowledgeable. And why is it that they're censored? Because you're telling the truth.
Yeah, of course.
If you were to go with all the other fake news and all the garbage and say, yes, vote for it, it's great, it's rainbows and bubblegum, but you're actually going against Big Brother, you're going against the authoritative regime, as I like to say here in Albany.
Yeah.
Hapless Hochul, Tyrant Hochul, as I like to refer to her. And if you were telling the truth, you'd probably be all over the place with all the other fake people they put up there. But because you're speaking the truth and fighting the good fight, you're being blacklisted and you're censored.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's horrible.
It's terrible. My last Prop 1 tweet probably got, 10,000 views, 15,000 views. We need that to get
You should have 10 million. 10 million you should have.
10 million.
Yes.
20. People need to hear about this. And it is powerful, social media, even though unfortunately they do censor the people that want to speak logic. And
Don't feel bad. We get censored ourselves for certain things. So, if you speak the truth or have a perspective that doesn't fit the narrative, you wind up on not the Santa Claus list, you wind up on the blacklist, unfortunately.
Yeah, but if everybody listening to, for example, this interview goes on Twitter, finds me, and then retweets, think of how many people then, this is how it works, guys. Again, it's about civic involvement. It's about getting engaged. It's about not just sitting there and complaining, but actually doing something. And that could be as simple as sharing the link to this interview with some people. We have to do something. Each one of us has to do something to help make this happen.
And as I alluded to earlier, Bobbie Anne is one woman, and smart, powerful, great woman, a great fighter, but she can't fight the good fight on her own. She needs backup. She needs us to help and step up. I wanted to ask you one question. We do have a lot of viewers around the world that watch, not just in New York and in the U.S. What would you say to those people in other countries that are maybe have faced similar things during the lockdown and the pandemic and whatnot, and maybe their leaders, so to speak, are power hungry like Tyrant Hochul. What would be your advice to those folks watching in other countries? Would it be the same advice you're giving American
Yeah,
citizens?
same thing. You have to get involved. You have to get, if no one is stepping up to the government and saying, you guys can't do that, you know, making the phone calls, sending the emails, writing the letters, make an appointment, go to their office, sit down, talk to them face to face, or talk to their staffer if they're too busy, you know, that is civic involvement. You have to do that. If you don't do that, then they think nobody cares. We can do whatever we want. No one's going to stop us. That's it.
Because we saw throughout the pandemic, there were a lot of other countries, Australia comes to mind, where there was a lot of overreach by those who were in charge.
Yeah.
And
it's happening all over.
And it's not to pick on Australia, but it was all over. But we have a lot of viewers from, I think, probably 35 countries now that watch us and subscribe. So I know that while it may be on the forefront here in New York and the U.S., there are other countries and other people out there that are facing other similar types of repression from, you know, bad people with bad intentions who unfortunately hold power.
It's the same thing. They have to get involved. They
Canada.
can't just
Yeah.
complain about it. It's not going to work out.
Yeah.
But I wanted to thank you for coming. I really appreciate your time. I unfortunately have another meeting I have to get to.
Sure.
But this is great that you are, you know, taking the time to report on this and help spread the word.
Now, listen, we want to thank you, Bobbie, on behalf of the citizens of New York. Thank you for fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
You're doing it pro bono. Obviously, you're in a real office with real staff, with real overhead. You're not making any money, at least now, not getting rich for sure on it. And you're also making yourself a target, you know, to those unscrupulous folks like Hochul and other garbage in Albany. We don't have to name them, but so it takes a woman with a lot of character and courage to do that. And I want to thank you on behalf of New York.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks. I hope we can come back in the future and follow up with you.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
thank you so much for having us, Bobbie. And to everybody out there, if you haven't liked or subscribed, please do so now. And share this interview. Share what Bobbie Anne is saying with everybody, because the election is coming up next month, November 5th. Prop 1 is on the ballot. We have to be smart. We have to protect our rights. They're eroding every day. So share this with everybody. And for everybody who's tuning in, please be safe. Thank you for tuning in, and God bless you.